From my understanding, my dad always wanted her to be a Playboy bunny, and that's how we ended up where we are. I think she did it out of respect for him, really.
Wow, a sign for your hand.
She was very modest, I believe, and we would tell her how beautiful she was, and she would think, no, you know, she wasn't good enough. She was trying to get a music career started in country music, and she was trying to get established in Nashville at the time. And Playboy had backed her on that, so they were trying to help her with the connections in Nashville.
It was about 18 months time frame that they went from Stacey's first pageant to Mrs. Ohio to Playboy. It was all very, very quickly. But to me, she was my mom.
Looky, this is Risky. Can you say hi to Risky? Yes, this is your new puppy.
She never came off like she was, oh, I'm all that in a bag of chips. Like, it just never came off that way to me. I saw her as what she was, you know, a human being who had to get ready like everybody else and put one shoe on in front of the other, just like everybody else.
When I met Stacey, I felt like she was very well-spoken. I felt like she was much more accomplished than I was, especially, you know, I was just out of high school. So I thought, wow, and she was Mrs. Ohio, and I looked up to that.
Stacey was on a really clear trajectory, and I know she was probably thinking about Playmate of the Year next, and then on into the entertainment industry.
Jim was pretty excited. He was proud of her and proud of the work that she'd done and was ready to continue.
My dad would do her hair and her nails and her makeup, and he just made sure that everything was perfect, picture perfect.
It was always about taking care of her. He would call, oh, I understand you and Stacey are rooming together. He was so nice and just very concerned about Stacey.
It seemed like he was incredibly supportive, very secure, wanted Stacey to go on to be Playmate of the Year and have a country music career and all those things. In the 90s, when Playmates were competing for Playmate of the Year, the magazine always wanted to know who the readers wanted. So they would have this 1-900 number people could call to cast a vote. Like, they would press a number for whatever month. But also, there was this component of it where callers could elect to have a conversation with the actual Playmates. And actually speaking to the Playmate over the 1-900 number would make the Playmate seem so much more accessible. This is news. This year, as in the past, callers can go on record by nominating their choices for Playmate of the Year, but they can also hear messages from their favorite and leave messages for the ladies. Playmates will answer some calls personally.
Stacey was very, very serious about getting Playmate of the Year and very serious about Playboy and it being a catapult in her career. So she took that phone line very, very seriously and thought that that was going to get her better standing with Playboy. Fans would call in and the operator would punch you in and they would pick who they want to speak to and put you through. Mostly young men that had seen the magazine and wanted to talk to the girl in the magazine. And they would really ask, is this really you? Why did you pose for Playboy? Simple questions.
So these women were talking to all these anonymous callers that they don't know, and they're not trained to handle these conversations. So they could have been asking these women for any kinds of subtle hints as to where they lived or where they might be during a certain period of time.
We were all told, you don't engage. You've got to be very careful with the things that you say and how you say it. And they'd get disconnected if they started trying to talk dirty or you know, anything inappropriate. The operator would listen in and disconnect if anything went wrong. We made $150 for 3 hours of being on the phone lines. And fans paid $3 a minute to speak to the girls. It was interesting and it was kind of fun. You could really make a nice extra chunk of change.
So their finances are always very variable, the Arthurs. They have big expenses, a lot of travel. So they start having money troubles around this time where it's not as steady as they would like. This was a way to keep money coming in and to keep all the lights on and all the businesses running.
The centerfold was always trying to accomplish not only beauty and sexuality, but a sense of intimacy with the subject. So the reader could feel like they really know this woman. And on the back of the centerfold, they would have this data sheet. So this is in her handwriting, and it would tell you all kinds of things about her, from her favorite foods to what her perfect date would be. And there were pictures of her from when she was a teenager. So the goal was really for this to be a fantasy woman, and they could feel like, oh, this is the girl next door. This is somebody I have a chance with, but she's stunning. I think it was a bad idea to have the Playmates be that accessible. I'm sure so many men called and then felt like they really knew these people, and it's kind of shocking to me that the Playmates were asked to do that. I feel like that's kind of crossing a line.
In March of 1991, a fan had began to call Stejsi. His name was James Lindbergh. And he loved to talk to the Playmates. He would call regularly and stay on the phone for long periods of time.
James Lindbergh is a 32-year-old man who lives in California. He's really a loner. He doesn't seem to go out that often. He, starts calling this line.
I remember talking to James. He talked about his grandma. He's missed his grandma and loved his grandma. He wasn't inappropriate, he didn't say anything sexual. It was just the way he was so emotionally, serious. He would, didn't have a sense of humor. I noticed that right away, and I thought, that's not right. He was the only one that made me feel kind of sad and bad. In my Playmate issue, they write up things for the girls in the magazine. And the writer mentioned we used to water balloon tourists in Las Vegas. And it would make us laugh. He would say, well, why would you do that? I don't understand. Why would you have done that to people? And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I feel bad about it. I feel really bad. He would get very upset and mad, turn on a dime. That's when he started talking to Stejsi more. They had become friends in his mind, for certain.
James Lindbergh actually set the record for the most amount of phone calls. He had spent over $15,000 just on this phone line. And keep in mind, this guy was not making a lot of money. He worked as a trucker and he was out of work for a while. So this was a huge amount of cash to him.
And that should have been a red flag right there. It's almost like if somebody was drinking too much at a bar, they might get cut off. I think with Playboy, profit was coming first in that situation, for sure.
Stejsi said, it's okay. I'm fine. He's fine. He's harmless.
None of us knew the road that she was going would lead to the dead end that it did.